Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Define Disaster. This is Battlefield 4. In today's weapon showdown, we'll be taking a close look at the ACW-R and MTAR-21 with the aim of finding out which of these two close quarter orientated carbines is the best choice. Before we get into comparing these weapons, checking out their stats and their strengths and weaknesses, quick shout out to Croc King, TR, and Nathan Grimmer for suggesting this video. I hope I'm able to answer all your questions regarding both the performance of these weapons and their strengths and weaknesses, as well as when to choose which for which situation. With that being said, let's start off with the ACW-R carbine. It has a carbine damage model, and as such, a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4. The rate of fire, very competitive, very high at 880 rounds per minute. Not quite as high as the MTAR-21, but definitely plentiful for close quarter situations and should yield some pretty impressive results when going up against your average assault rifle in close encounter combat. Moving on to the magazine size, standard 30+1 in the chamber, 31 bullets in total available to you. This is no surprise and is no different to the MTAR-21 that we'll be covering in just a moment. Where this weapon can distinguish itself is the reload times. At 1.83 seconds, it is blazing fast for the short reload, meaning you're not going to get caught in close quarter combat reloading your gun too often compared to some of the other close quarter options that we have, both available to all classes and of course the assault class in specifically when we're talking about assault rifles. Even its long reload is very short at 2.15 seconds. Brilliant for close quarter combat, means you shouldn't get caught too often reloading your gun in situations where you'd rather be shooting it. Moving on then to the recoil, this is a close quarter carbine. It's got a hefty amount of recoil, that's no secret. To be specific, it's got 0.41 degrees vertical pull, 0.45 to the left and 0.3 to the right. What's noteworthy here is that the recoil is relatively hefty in all directions, meaning that not only does this gun pull upwards, but it also shakes violently side to side, which makes it a little bit more difficult to use at medium range and for tap fire. This is further exacerbated by the fact that the first shot recoil multiplier on this gun is also high at 2.5. Surely it's not the highest in the game, but it's enough to make tap firing very difficult without the right set of attachments. Moving on then to the accuracy of the ACW-R, this has a standard ADS value that is aiming down sight while not moving for carbines at 0.3, slightly better than its MTAR comparison in today's video. However, we are talking about a close quarter focused gun and therefore the ADS isn't too important. Its hip fire is also standard to carbine with a value at 2.5 for hip firing standing while moving, meaning you should be able to hip fire your gun in close quarter, but it's not a PDW and you shouldn't try to use it as one. Next up then we have the MTAR-21, once more a standard carbine damage model here with a maximum damage of 24 and a minimum damage of 15.4, a slightly higher fire rate when comparing to the ACW-R, even though only marginally at 900 rounds per minute. It has a standard magazine size at 30+1, 31 bullets in total, as does the ACW-R and most guns in the game. Where this gun falls short when comparing to something like the ACW-R is its reload time. It has a respectable yet on the slower side short reload for close quarter weapons at 2.35 seconds. Especially its long reload is troublesome at 2.75 seconds, and it means that you're more likely to get caught reloading this gun instead of engaging your enemy when somebody rounds the corner unexpectedly. Its recoil, similar to the ACW-R, is high, however it's set up a little bit differently with a lower vertical recoil at 0.34, yet higher recoil side to side overall with a even pull of 0.42 to the left and 0.42 to the right. What does this mean? How does this differentiate itself from the ACW-R? Well, they both have similar kicks. The MTAR kicks a little bit less vertically, but more violently to the right and left. However, on the other side, it does kick evenly both to the right and left, while the ACW-R pulls to the left quite significantly. The first shot recoil multiplier is almost identical on the MTAR-21 at 2.6, slightly higher than the ACW-R, meaning that once more trying to tap fire this weapon at long range without any kind of attachments may prove relatively difficult. Moving on then to the accuracy of the MTAR-21 at 0.35 for the aiming down sight while not moving value. We have a slightly less accurate weapon here. However, this is a close quarter focused carbine, and thus this ADS is more than sufficient to compete with the ACW-R in most any situation. Where this weapon does have a marginal advantage over the ACW-R is when we look at hip fire, that is hip firing while standing and moving. At 2.25 versus the ACW-R's 2.5, it is slightly better when it is debatable though how much of a difference this will make. With the weapons now being analyzed, let's move on to the attachments that I would recommend for using these weapons. Now, in case you haven't quite noticed yet, both of these weapons are very similar, and therefore the attachments I'm going to be recommending for them are identical. As such, a red dot sight optic for a close quarter weapon is nothing new. My personal favorite, the Coyote. Yours may be the Cobra or the Reflex RDS. Whatever you prefer, you choose what you feel best is for you here. However, in my opinion, no medium range sight, 3.4 or 4 times magnified optic is recommendable on a weapon that has as much kick and recoil as the ACW-R or MTAR-21. Accessory for me is going to be a laser sight, be that a red laser sight or a green laser sight. It doesn't really matter. Just remember to turn it off in smoky situations, dark corridors, if you think it may give your position away. If you struggle with that, just leave away the laser sight altogether and don't actually throw any attachment on there. You could also put a target detector on there if you feel like it. I don't see any major benefits being derived from it, however. Barrel attachment for me is the compensator, and I say this and again, close quarter weapons for me are all about extending their effective range. Now, you can't take an MTAR and ACW-R to make it a medium range, long range king, but you can make it a weapon that is capable to do some significant damage at medium-ish range, making the weapons far more useful and lethal in situations other than TDM. For example, rush or closer quarter orientated conquest maps. Therefore, for me, I use the compensator because it allows me to much more narrow down that horizontal recoil, which is one of the main factors hindering me from using this weapon at longer ranges because, of course, horizontal recoil is far harder to control than its vertical counterpart. If you're running this gun exclusively, however, in close quarter, you may want to run a suppressor instead, not really needing the stabilization factor that you gain from the compensator, helping you to extend at longer ranges. You can therefore stay off the minimap when firing your gun. Underbarrel attachment is a similar choice for a similar reason. The angled foregrip allowing me to tap fire this weapon a little bit more. It's still not going to be easy, but it's a hell of a lot easier to tap fire one of these weapons with an angled foregrip, and in my opinion at least, close to impossible to do without. Once more, extending the range of this gun. Once more, however, if you were using this exclusive in close quarter and don't find the first shot kick to be a hindrance to your performance, you could also use something like a vertical grip, allowing you to hip fire more accurately and shoot more accurately while on the move. Now, with the attachments being covered, let's come to some form of conclusion and comparison. What major differences make these weapons different from each other? How do they behave differently? And when should you be using which one of them? Well, in my opinion, the ACW-R is the better of the two. And yes, some will argue there is a 20 round per minute difference here of fire rate, and this is why the MTAR-21 is better. However, in my opinion, that's not enough to make a difference. What is enough to make a difference, though, is its reload times, and those can make a difference. I prefer fast reloading guns. That's why I love the M416 and prefer it slightly over, for example, the ACE-23. So the ACW-R for me is better in close quarter because of the reload times, but I also prefer it for a more broader playstyle, a more wide range situations. Rush, for example, where I need a gun that is also good at medium-ish ranges, at least from time to time, so I'm not completely confined to close quarter combat. And even then, I prefer the ACW-R, and this is not a matter of necessarily the ACW-R being better, more me being better suited to this weapon. What do I mean by that? Well, we have two different recoil patterns here, equally difficult yet different. The ACW-R's difficulty lies more in its vertical recoil, while the MTAR more in its horizontal. And I am much more skilled or better at controlling vertical recoil personally than accounting for that left to right pull, and therefore I prefer the ACW-R. You, on the other hand, may be different from me. You may prefer the kind of equal, balanced out horizontal recoil of the MTAR-21 and the lower vertical recoil, and then the MTAR-21 may be better for you. It is a matter of personal preference when it comes to the more broader scheme of the weapons, when to use them in more general situations. However, in close quarter, at least in my opinion, the stats give us a clear picture, and so does my personal experience running them. The ACW-R is slightly better. Now, with that being said, both of these guns are excellent, and I had a blast using both of them. I prefer these weapons for TDM and rush, close quarter kind of rush game modes. I'd love to know what you think about both the ACW-R and the MTAR-21. Which do you prefer and why? When do you usually run them? Do you use a different attachment setup? And how successful are you with it? Leave that all down below in the comments, as well as your future video suggestions. With all that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in the next Battlefield 4 video.